Our movie starts with the smiling faces of a happy couple expecting their third child. The wife is getting wheeled into the hospital. Everyone is happy and nervous at the same time. But the hospital staff fails to notice is that there is a trail of blood following them. From here, the story takes a turn for the worse. Then a forced surgery takes place. But suddenly, the main character of the story, and let's call her Kate, wakes up screaming, letting us all know that this was all a dream. Or it wasn't. We'll figure it out later. Let's move on. A few minutes later, the director takes us to one of Kate's therapy sessions, where we get to know that she has a lot of guilt and trauma because of losing an unborn child. During this session, we also learn that Kate and her husband John plan to adopt a third child, causing Kate to feel even more guilty. We also get glimpses of Kate's personal life when she picks up her daughter Max from school, tries to work through her trauma by using her pain to drive her artistic side, and generally spends some quality time with her kids Max and Daniel. In the next scene, Max, while preparing for bedtime, takes out her cochlear implant, which is basically her hearing aid, and keeps it aside. What follows is a painful and emotional storytelling session where Kate narrates a story to Max, entirely using sign language. With all of these emotionally traumatic events unfolding in their life, the most logical course of action for most parents will perhaps not be to adopt a third child. But Kate and John decide to take this challenge. Cut to the couple driving expectantly to the orphanage run by a very stern but fair Sister Abigail. While Kate tries to figure out which child she would like to take home, her husband John hears a melodious voice and starts to follow it upstairs. It takes him to Esther, an amiable child who seems to have a knack for painting stories. The quick-witted girl charms him almost immediately by telling him stories. While they initiate the process of adopting Esther, Sister Abigail tells Kate and John of how Esther's lost her last foster family. She was the sole survivor of a terrible house fire. Despite this, she is a pleasant and agreeable child who has a very positive demeanor. Sister Abigail issues a warning that Esther does not like anyone touching the ribbons that she wears. Time for Esther to assimilate with the family. We see that Esther learns sign language to communicate with Max, who adores her. She makes a decent effort to bond with Daniel, who is relatively cold towards her. She is shown her room, which Kate has prepared lovingly for her, complete with a fish tank. Between all this, we are shown how Daniel is not happy with all the attention that Esther has been getting. He tends to spend. It's time for Esther to go to school, and it is clearly not going to be an easy task. The way Esther looks and dresses, she soon becomes a laughingstock for her new classmates at the school. While all of this is going on, we see that Daniel has a newfound interest in learning to shoot. One fine day, he accidentally shoots down a pigeon and feels badly about it. Esther and Max appear at this point, and Esther takes matters into her hands by killing the struggling pigeon with a heavy stone to show them how to end the pain. Daniel feels very weird about what Esther did, while Max looks away in fear. On the other side of the house, Kate, while cleaning Esther's room, comes across an old diary. She decides to do the decent thing and keeps the diary back in the drawer in order to not invade Esther's privacy. Back at the school, during an ongoing scene, one of Esther's classmates, Brenda, yanks at the ribbon she wears on her neck. This seems to anger Esther greatly. While continuing to build their mother-daughter relationship over learning to play piano, Esther shows curiosity regarding the death of Jessica, Kate's unborn child. Kate, being the nurturing mother that she is, takes Esther to Jessica's living memorial of white roses that were cultivated on Jessica's remains. The wonderful mother-daughter bond over Jessica's memories. While the kids seem to be settling well, Kate starts to go back to being the fun-loving that she was before she became this raging alcoholic. A few days later, Kate and John get into a playful conversation that turns into a bit more. As they start to do the deed in the middle of the house, Esther walks in on them. This seems to shock the parents, and they immediately try to get things under control. While trying to explain the workings of a relationship between a husband and a wife, Kate realizes that Esther knows more about sex than a child her age should know. Kate and John decide that the best way to deal with this is for John to spend more time with Esther. He takes her to the park. While in the park, as John is distracted by a chatty lady who knows the couple, Esther notices Brenda in the play area. She manages to scare Brenda, pushes her down the playground equipment. Then, Max starts showing more affection towards her sister, perhaps in fear, while Daniel keeps resenting Esther a bit more every day. Then we learn that Esther is actually a good pianist, and she was only pretending to learn from Kate to give her something to do. This absolutely baffles Kate, who starts noticing Esther's manipulative ways. Soon enough, Sister Abigail arrives for a wellness check and confides in the couple of the stories she heard about Esther's past families. How bad things seem to follow her everywhere she goes. This disturbs Kate a great deal. During Abigail's visit, the family fails to notice that Esther was there hearing everything through the wall. She makes an elaborate ploy, including Max, in her plan to run Sister Abigail off the road. Once Sister Abigail is out of her vehicle, Esther attacks her to death, while Max becomes an accidental witness. Esther then forces Max to hide Abigail's body in the treehouse, to which Max reluctantly complies. The police are involved in sister Abigail's murder, but they have no leads. Kate firmly suspects Esther but has no proof. Kate tries to research the background of Esther's orphanage records. She even reaches out to the original Russian orphanage where Esther grew up. It turns out they never had anyone matching Esther's description. At home, Esther confides in John that she believes Kate hates her. John suggests that she make an effort to show Kate how much she means to her. To make matters worse, Esther presents Kate with the white roses from Jessica's living grave. This makes Kate extremely angry, and she takes off to spend some time in solitude while Esther executes her plan B. Esther breaks her own forearm and pretends to have been injured by Kate to gain sympathy from John. This drives Kate straight to the booze shop to buy 2 bottles of wine, which she, later on, pours down the sink because she realizes that she is done being an alcoholic. To push Kate's buttons even further, Esther executes an accident where she puts Max and Daniel at great risk. When Kate witnesses this, she talks her therapist and John to look at things objectively and understand her side of the story. What she doesn't know is Esther has already destroyed her reputation by showing John the wine bottles, leading him to believe that Kate has started drinking again. John threatens her to go to rehab or he will leave with the kids. On the other side of the house, Max and Daniel confide in each other regarding all the bloody mess that is Esther's doing. Daniel makes a plan to acquire the evidence of Sister Abigail's murder from the treehouse. Later that day, in a confrontation, Esther mentions to Kate that the reason she is so good at pushing her buttons is thanks to Kate's diary that she has been reading. This reminds Kate of the diary she saw in Esther's drawer, and she rushes to find it. As she looks through it, she finds pictures of the fathers from the families that took in Esther and a weird-looking stamp. Upon further digging, Kate figures out that Esther was not kept in an orphanage but in a mental asylum in Russia. While this goes on, Daniel creeps into his treehouse to look for damning evidence on Esther. She figures this out and locks him inside the treehouse and lights it on fire. Daniel heroically manages to escape but lands up in the ICU, and the entire family is worried about how this happened. This makes Kate mad, and she angrily starts telling John about all her findings. Noticing that the parents are distracted, Esther moves into Daniel's room and tries to kill him again. Kate, however, comes to his rescue and becomes angry at the fact that no one still believes her. By this point, John has had enough, and the hospital staff sedates Kate to calm her down. John takes Max and Esther back home. While he tries to get some rest, Esther executes the final part of her dangerous plan. She tries to seduce John, which fails and only serves to remind John of all that Kate had been saying. He realizes she was right all along, and Esther is indeed a very manipulative. Cut to Kate lying in the hospital, all groggy from the sedatives. She receives a call from the mental institution where Esther was admitted in Russia. The caller warns her to stay away from Esther and call the authorities as soon as she can. He also reveals that Esther is not a child, but a grown woman about 32 years of age. She suffers from a hormone disorder that makes her appear as if she were a child. The caller also reveals that she has had 7 known victims in the past, and that she can be easily recognized by the scars on her wrists and neck. These scars resulted from her struggling against her straitjacket at the mental institution. Upon learning all of this, Kate tries to contact John, but not getting an answer, she rushes to her house. And back at the house, John tries to find Esther and notices that she is not in her room. Suddenly the lights go out, and he decides to fix the wiring that seems to have been damaged by the storm. He stares in disbelief as he notices that he has been stabbed, and as he turns, Esther continues to stab him to death. Kate enters the house and finds John's bloodied corpse. She tries to find her kids and in the process gets shot by Esther. A fight starts, and they pursue each other through the house. Unable to find her, Kate realizes that Esther may have gone towards the treehouse. After locating her, in an attempt to stop her from doing any more damage, Kate crashes onto Esther with a layer of glass between them. Esther runs out into the icy storm outside, laid behind her. By this time, the police also arrive. Things are still quite confrontational for Kate and Esther, who are locked in a battle over the frozen lake. As luck would have it, as a final shot of revenge, Kate kicks Esther into the icy water of the frozen lake, causing her neck to break and her body to sink, thus ending the nightmarish reign of the orphan forever. So, yeah, that was it for this one, guys. Hope you enjoyed this explanation. I personally would rate this one with a 7 out of 10. What about y'all? Let me know in the comments section below. Cheers!